All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. We are doing, I think, team number 5 right here for the 30 team deep dive for the NBA. Every single team, all 30 of them, and we're only at 5 here. We got training camp starting real soon. We got preseason less than a month away, so we're gonna just kind of fire these off here starting now. I want to show today we're doing the Raptors. I don't know if I mentioned that. Today is very special to me because let me pull this up. I covered Toronto. I covered the Rap Show all last week. I hope my Raptors fans enjoy this background we have right here. And I streamed every game in the playoffs. It was great talking with you guys. And, we streamed like, I don't know, probably a quarter of all the Raptor games this past season. Raptor Nation completely changed my life. So this one means a lot to me. And I wanted to get it started before we even just do any briefing. Look how crazy this minute staggering is. 38 minutes for Pascal. 38 minutes for Freddie, 36 for OG, 35.4 for Scotty, 35 for Gary. Those are a little bit more normal, but then there's just a huge drop off. And we'll talk about that in a second. But the Toronto Raptors, 48 and 34 this past season. They had a top 15 offense at 14. They had a top 10 defense at number 10. And, I don't really want to even talk about the playoffs last season, but the reoccurring theme for Toronto last year was lack of depth combined with just random injuries. If we go back to the playoffs, specifically just health wise, you had a fully healthy team, or it wasn't fully healthy in game one, but you had your whole starting five. And by that I mean Fred, Gary, Scotty, OG, Siakam. That was your starting five. Well, what happens? Scotty Barnes gets injured almost right away, and he misses a couple of games. Freddie misses once. Scotty comes back a couple games later. Freddie misses 2 games. That was just the reoccurring theme for Toronto. We didn't see them fully healthy for more than, I want to say, 15 games in the regular season. And the fact that with the bench they had and all the injuries that they faced, and keep in mind the expectations for Toronto outside of Toronto were extremely low because they had the 4th pick. They played an entire season in Tampa Bay. They were the Tampa Bay Raptors, which is idiotic. They're from Canada. They have to play a whole season. They got to play 41 games in a different country, nowhere near your country. I mean, it's for a whole nother day, but it is really ridiculous. So they had pretty low key expectations outside of Raptor fans. So you could call it casual fans, whatever you want to call it, casual. The NBA media did not care about Toronto, really. And I remember when they drafted Scotty Barnes, there was, I guess your quote unquote casuals were like, why didn't they just draft Jalen Suggs? Why didn't they get Suggs? And well, that ended up working really nicely in their favor because Scotty Barnes ended up winning Rookie of the Year. I think Scotty Barnes is one hell of a talent. We'll talk about him once we get to him. But for first things, let's get this on the screen. This is their current roster at the time of this recording. Most recently, about a week ago, they signed Josh Jackson. We'll see if he ends up making the roster. But there are a bunch of just kind of lower key, smaller, I don't want to say lesser known guys, but DJ Wilson, Josh Jackson, Juancho Hernan Gomez, they made some nice low-key moves in the offseason. And if they end up making the roster and they end up getting minutes, it's just going to be another win for Masai and Bobby. So the Raptors as management, as coaches, just the Toronto Raptors as an organization are just really on their game. And they've always been on their game. A lot of people call Scotty Barnes the next Giannis Antetokounmpo. So I'm really excited to see what the future of this Raptor squad ends up looking like. Before we get into this roster and their off season, it would mean the world to me if you guys hit the like button and drop the subscribe button. That way we can always keep this show free to watch and just kind of keep them coming. So really appreciate it. And this is their roster. So outside of those moves that I just talked about, the big, and I tell you, this is a big ass move, was signing Otto Porter Jr. from the defending champions, the Golden State Warriors. Otto Porter Jr. is going to change this team. He's going to change everything, okay? Because this is a guy who He's a 40% three-point shooter. He is a phenomenal defender. And at this point in his career, it's not like 33-minute a night Otto Porter Jr. like it was when he was coming out of Georgetown with Washington. So what I mean by that was when Otto first got into the league, yeah, he was putting up like 20 a night. He was playing really solid, but he'd get hurt all the goddamn time. It's almost, I don't even want to compare it to OG Anunoby because I feel like OG can really take that next leap, can get to that next level if he can stay healthy. But Otto Porter Jr. is still, he's had a very successful NBA career. Some people were writing him off, calling him a bust. Thankfully, OG is nowhere, he's 17, 6, and 3. I mean, this is not close, but like kind of a little bit close. My point is this. You have a lot of talent in your starting roster. And let's just say somebody got sick. Let's just say somebody got a sprain. I don't want to say any big injury, but injuries are something you have to think about. So let's just, for devil's advocate, let's just say somebody got hurt. Right? Scotty Barnes, he's got a stuffy nose. Nick Nurse is like, you're all set. Just I don't want a stuffy nose really, so just stay home and don't come in. Well, how do you feel about Otto Porter Jr. coming in and starting for that game? You feel great. All right, you feel great. And if you watch the NBA playoffs this past season, you feel even better. Because Otto Porter Jr., I won't go as far to say as, if Otto Porter Jr. wasn't on the Golden State Warriors, they wouldn't have won the championship. But I think, it's not like a PJ Tucker on the Milwaukee Bucks, because I stand by, I don't think the Milwaukee Bucks win the championship if they didn't have PJ Tucker. It's not like, it's like just a brief step below that. Point is this. Otto Porter Jr. is going to do kind of what Thaddeus Young did for the Toronto Raptors, where when they made that trade at the trade deadline last year, they traded for Thaddeus Young. At the time when it was like, oh, they gave up a first round pick. At the time, it was like this was the worst trade of the trade deadline. And it took a little bit of time for people to kind of fully come around to the idea of Thaddeus Young coming from San Antonio, where it's like, oh yeah, hold on. Just because he's averaging 6'4" and 2 doesn't mean he's playing like a 6'4" and 2 guy. When Thaddeus Young is out there on the court, you can heavily rely on offense, defense, passing, leadership, mentor, like just above and beyond. Thaddeus Young has had one amazing basketball career, and he's still got some gas in the tank. So until I guess he is no longer on the Toronto Raptors, I'm going to savor every minute of it. 34 years old, this guy was just super clutch for him. Like I said, the minutes are not anything crazy. He shot 40% from downtown when he got to Toronto. This was a guy who was not shooting threes. And it's very similar to Precious Achiuwa. Precious Achiuwa, we'll just get into the starting, or I guess Precious probably won't even start. But now that we're talking about Precious was a guy who shot like 1-3 in combined Miami and Memphis. So year in college, year in Miami, his rookie season, he shot like 1 or 2 threes. He shot 40% from downtown for this Raptors squad in the second half of the season. What we saw in the playoffs, especially if you weren't watching, every single Raptors game all that closely in the regular season, what we saw in the playoffs was like, whoa. Hold on. This guy might actually be a star. You might actually have a star in Precious Achiuwa. And I'll tell you this, if there's somewhere you want, like if there's somewhere where you just know they can turn him into a star, the answer is Toronto. I mean, they are so good. They have some of the best coaches. They're one of the best organizations in the league. But I genuinely think because it's Toronto, it's not technically America, I think they just get really hardcore shafted. But when I tell, man, Precious Achiuwa, like you're looking at a real legitimate possible star here. I know he really flashed in Summer League last season for him. And it was like, why is he playing right now? Why is he in this? He comes out and started the season. Kem Birch is still getting the starts. You had Siakam out for a couple of weeks. And, Precious he was playing really solid. He was just playing really solid. And it was like, okay, maybe this kind of falls off once, Siakam comes back and his minutes kind of, because they were essentially kind of splitting Kem and Precious here and there. Starters, finishers, they're kind of like rotating it as their big man. And then once Siakam came back, the thought was, all right, maybe, Precious might get back, not to reality because we know he's a good basketball player, but maybe we're not going to be getting, 9 and 7 Precious Achua every single night. Well, that's exactly what we ended up getting. So you have just a possible rising star in Precious Achua. Now, the starting lineup is going to be interesting. I would imagine they're going to deploy what they deployed in game one of their Sixers playoff series, which was Freddie, Gary. Technically, it was listed as OG, Siakam, and then Scotty. Technically, Scotty was listed as the center in those games. When you were playing Joel Embiid, and I mean, I guess unless you're Rudy Gobert, when you play Joel Embiid, your team plays Joel Embiid, it's just like a ton of help. It's a ton of help. And the issue for Toronto in the playoffs was, it's not like necessarily they needed size because we just saw, especially with Golden State right now, this past year when they won, you don't need 7-footers on your team. Right? You don't need them. What got Toronto outside of health and depth, which were like the two just kind of finishers to them, it was not even a Joel Embiid problem. It was quite honestly that in like the first 2 games of the series, Philly did not miss a shot. Like they just straight up would not miss a shot. And no matter how good the help defense was for Toronto, no matter what their rotation, no matter what they tried to do, Philly literally just could not miss a shot. And when you have your point guard injured and you don't have a backup point guard and your other only playmakers are Gary Trent Jr. and Siakam, and Scotty Barnes gets injured, and it was just so unideal. It was just so unideal, and they almost didn't lose the playoff series. Just real quick, if Joel Embiid didn't make the craziest shot that I've seen in a very long time, probably since the Kawhi shot, and he'll never make a shot like that again in his life in a moment like that. It's 2-1 Toronto, and then I don't even want to get into it because I could talk about that all day. Like that one was tough. But the good news is Toronto is looking way better this season as far as depth goes. Now, staying in the starting lineup, you got Freddie. Freddie and Pascal are going to. These are your leaders. These are your 20 point per game. Shout out to Freddie because he's from Rockford, Illinois. All I need is health. All right. All I need is health. I'm a little bit more worried about Freddie because of their guard depth. All right. I don't really like with Siakam, you have guys like Chris Boucher, Precious Achua, Kem Burt, Scotty Barnes if need be, OG and Anunoby if need be. You got Otto Porter Jr., you got Thaddeus Young, you got TJ Wilson, you got Juancho. You have basically a bunch of long ass dudes, like, taller and long, which is what they're looking for. Well, so basically what I'm saying is Siakam doesn't need to play 38 a night this year. Now, Freddie, on the other hand, it's not so much that I'm worried about Freddie. It's more so that I'm worried about Malachi Flynn and Delano. Now, I want to talk about Delano real quick. 3, 2, and 2 were his averages last year. He's 22 years old. He's 22. So he was 21 last season. He was a late second-round pick. Round 2, pick 16, came out of Nebraska. And I remember watching him in Summer League and be like, damn, okay, he might actually help the Raptors out this next season. Now, he only played about 11 minutes a night. He shot 25%, 41% from the field. Was not shooting great. It was more so what I liked about Delano was his effort. I liked the intensity that he played with. I thought that he played smart. I thought that he just played what would soon be winning basketball. Now, Malachi, I'm very big on as well because when he came out of the draft, he was one of the best defenders at his position. In the entire draft, Malachi Flynn was one of the best guard defenders. What we saw of Malachi 2 years ago in his rookie season, at the end of it, he was dropping like 12 and this is a complete and total guess. 12. I'm guessing 12 and 7. It might not have been as crazy. I mean, he still averaged about 7 points. Damn, I hate that real GM. Only ESPN has second half numbers. So basically, Malachi Flynn was averaging double digits. He was averaging over 5 assists per game at the end of the season because they were about to get the number 4 pick. They were just clearly resting their guys. They were very injured all season as it was. It was they were waving the white flag, trying to tank for a draft pick. Malachi looked good. Well, I don't mean to say Malachi looked bad last season, but You have a guy who's dropping like 60, 70 in these pro-amp games. Like, we know Malachi's a good basketball player. But coming into his third season right here, I would honestly view it as do or die. I really think that if it's not clear, oh shit, I'm getting a phone call. Hold on. Okay, we're back. Sorry about that, guys. My car decided to break. So just whole headache in itself. We're talking about Malachi Flynn. I love Malachi. All right. It's just my thing is this. I have a prime Siakam. I have a prime Freddie. Now I have a rising star in Scotty Barnes. Okay. I have a rising star in Gary Trent Jr., Precious Achua. But then I have my nice little, role players, guys like Chris Boucher, Otto Porter Jr., Thaddeus Young. Right. Then I have like my more wild cards. Like, they'll be valuable if they're healthy. Maybe OG takes that next step. Maybe he doesn't. He'll still be serviceable as long as he can stay healthy. So my point is, the Raptors could legitimately win now. You can win later because you got Scotty. You could also win right now because you have the talent. They just lack the depth. And if Scotty Barnes were to take that, I know he was rookie of the year, but let's just say, Scotty Barnes like all-star next season. If he takes that next step, and then once you get into the playoffs, he like continues climbing those steps, that should fear Eastern Conference teams. Let me get that just right off there. So my point with Malachi is this. They have time, but at the same time, they don't have time. And when you have Delano Banton essentially knocking at your door, he's 1 year younger. He can't shoot the same, but he's still a good defender. He's a good passer. He can get you rebounds. He can still, he's on the come up. So if Delano and Malachi, or if Delano or Malachi, if both of those two cats aren't doing what they need to do on this Raptors bench, I unfortunately see Malachi Flynn being the one where it's like, Malachi, we love you, man. If we're going to be waiting on one of these guards, it's going to have to be Delano. Now, maybe I could be wrong. Maybe they decide to go with Malachi over Delano, but I have a hard time picturing that world. So that's my only caveat with this Raptors squad is the bench. Backup point guard. Backup guard is literally a bench guard is my only concern with them. I don't want to hear lack of superstars. You have plenty of talent with Pascal Siakam, who I know there are some who argue he's a superstar. Freddie, Scotty, Garrett, the roster. Just look at the roster. That's a talented championship roster. So, let's talk about Gary. All right. Now, actually, real quick, I don't know who they would target. I don't think it would be a guy like Dennis Schroeder. Maybe it would be a player like Eric Bledsoe, who is still out there. He's still on the market. He can shoot threes. He can defend. He can get you some points. He'll get you some assists. He can get you some rebounds. He's almost like an older Delano Banton, but that's not even close. So they'd be fine if need be, but for right now, they're very clearly set with these guards, this 4-man guard rotation, because you also got to remind yourself that you have Scotty Barnes and you have Pascal Siakam, and both of those two guys, 4+ assist players. All right. Both of them are phenomenal at setting other players up. We really saw Siakam take that leap, in my opinion. He's always been a good passer. But Siakam had more of a season this year, passing-wise, where I think you really had to watch I don't know, maybe a quarter of the games. You had to watch like 25% of the games that he played in. He played in 68 of them, missed the first couple of weeks. It's just some of the passes he's very skilled, is basically what I'm trying to get at here. So, Gary Trent Jr., all right. It was really cool seeing Gary Trent Jr. like being kind of defensively. There was a point last season where Gary was averaging like 2.5 steals a night. He finished the season with 1.74. I believe he was definitely top 10 in steals per night. He might be top 5. Might have won it actually. With 1.75, probably not. Gary Trent Jr. I mean, we saw a 2-point increase, which might not seem going from 16 to 18 might not seem too crazy, but I mean, imagine if he goes to 18 to 20 and he becomes a 20-point per game scorer. He's still very young. He's only been in the league for, what is that, 4 seasons there. He's only improving. He's really only improving. I love that Gary Trent Jr. is on the Toronto Raptors, and he's not the best defender, right? We don't look at steals and like with blocks. You're not going to look at a guy's blocks and just only view that as how he can protect the rim, right? You're not going to do the same thing with steals. He'll get you some steals, and he can hold his own, but he's not like the best shooting guard defender in the NBA. Great player to have. Great player to have. It's guys like Gary that get you those championships. Scotty Barnes, man, 15, 8, and 4. Oh, man, this guy's such a superstar stud, dude. I really, it's not like 30% is bad from downtown whatsoever, but I really want to pinpoint this stat right here. We'll round up. He shot 74% from the free throw line. All right. That's a promising number. That is a very promising number because coming out of college, the assumption was that Scotty Barnes was not going to be a shooter in any regard, especially in his rookie season. Well, granted, he got a lot of points scored down below in the paint, but he shot a very impressive 49% from the field, 30% from downtown, and 74% from the free throw line. Scotty Barnes is ascending to a superstar, and you're kind of seeing it. You'll see it. We saw it last year. You'll see it more again. Siakam. This is, right there with Freddie. I would 100% say, sorry, Freddie, that Siakam is the best player on the Toronto Raptors at this current point. I don't want to, I feel like it would be disrespectful to say soon it'll be Scotty because Siakam is, that good. I mean, you got 23 points right here. I mean, this is what I'm talking about, man. We've just been seeing the assist totals rise. Look at these assists. We got assists right here. Can I highlight this? So I don't really like Real GM too much. It's increased every single season. And what we saw in the COVID year, in the Tampa Bay Raptor year, he had a very impressive career high 4.5 assists per game. And what did he do? Well, he just did it again, but did one more. So you can't forget about Siakam's playmaking, and I feel like he really demonstrated. I feel like he really reminded people he can play make not only for himself, but you can run and he is having him out on the court is beneficial for everybody. I mean, you really saw that with Siakam last year, although we kind of knew it. You just got a reminder of it. You got all NBA Siakam last season. Chris Boucher, I'm very glad they brought him back. He wasn't a guy where if they didn't bring him back, I'd be like, that's it. Throwing the flag, throwing the towel. But Chris Boucher, 9.6 rebounds. Big body. He can shoot threes. He's a solid blocker. He can protect the rim a little bit, but you're not expecting him to do that. He's more of, you're not going to get a high quality look if I'm guarding you and you're shooting it outside of the paint. That's more Chris Boucher's defense to me. So just a great, solid bench piece to have. We talked about Precious. OG, I struggle with OG. I really do because he's so cool. He's 25 years old. He just turned 25. Keep that one in mind as well. But he hasn't played in over 60 games in just two seasons. So it's not the end of the world. It really isn't the end of the world. 43 games 2 years ago, COVID year, was a bad year for them all. 48 last season. I'm not putting too much stock into injuries with OG. Yeah, the injuries have really sucked, but is he an injury-prone player? I really don't think so. I really don't think so. I genuinely think he has gotten the worst of luck when it's come to this the last 2 seasons. And if he can play, I'd say his golden number is probably 65. If he can play over 65 games for the Raptors this season, be healthy for you in the playoffs, you'll be reminded at just how valuable OG is. Everyone's waiting for him to take that next jump. This is almost 37% three-point shooter. This is a phenomenal defender. This is the definition of a 3-and-D player that is just rising. If OG, we talk about all the time, man, if OG can stay healthy for an entire season, he's probably going to get to 20 points or somewhere right around 20 points per game. and he will be extremely valuable for your squad. So we're waiting and seeing with OG. However, I do think he's going to have a perfectly good season, perfectly healthy, maybe not perfectly healthy season, but he's going to have a healthy season. So that's just why I think Kem Birch, Kem, there's so many moments where Kem, it's just like, was that it? Is that what we were looking for? I don't really know. I don't think so. When they first got him, when they first traded for him, 12 points. Keep in mind, once again, it was the end of the season for the Tampa Bay Raptors. 12 points, 7.5 rebounds, getting you some blocks. Kem wasn't that valuable for him, but I like having the big body. He had his moments in the playoffs. How's that? He had his moments in the playoffs. You're going up against Joel Embiid, who should have an MVP by now. Joel's probably the most talented center in the NBA. He's the most powerful center in the NBA. I don't think anyone's disagreeing with that. I feel like Kem Birch, he only started a couple games. Keep in mind, he's only averaging 10 to 15 minutes a night in the playoffs. But I feel like as long as he's not trying to create offensively, if he's getting you rebounds and just being a big body and at least like limiting Joel Embiid or limiting the center, waiting for your help, just standing ground, he's okay. He's not a guy where I'm like, they need to get rid of him right now. I'm not itching to get him back, but I'm not itching for them to get rid of him. Curious to hear what other people think. Josh Jackson, DJ Wilson, Juancho Hernangomez, these will all be very interesting. I'd throw in Justin Champagnie in there. You could even throw Jeff Doughton and Ron Harper, Gabe Brown if you want to as well. I would have a feeling that I don't know what the race is at currently, but Josh Jackson, DJ Wilson, Juancho Hernangomez, I mean, not all these players are going to make the roster. We got 5 here. We got 5. We got 10. You're looking at 15 currently below the limited playing time. So unless they decide to just be all set with Christian Koloko playing in the regular season, which I have a hard time believing that, maybe you see 2 out of the 3 of Josh Jackson, DJ Wilson, Juancho, Champagnie, and the other 3. I'm big on DJ Wilson. I'm big on Josh Jackson. I'm big on Juancho Hernangomez these guys keep freaking calling. This is unreal. All right, guys, we're back here. I'm really curious to see what this is going to look like finally chopped up. I hate car services, but I didn't want to end the video. I knew it was going to be a grimy fish saying, trade in the car. But I took the bait just in case. Didn't want to risk anything. But I didn't want to leave out Christian Koloko. All right. Now, I need to talk about Christian because Masai had one of the more bigger finesses in the trade deadline that I don't think people really realized at the time. There were plenty of people who realized as far as Raptors fans, but in media, I hate that it's only Raptors videos where I talk about national media because they get disrespected, and I swear to you. If I show a normal basketball fan, I avid basketball watcher, look at this trade. And it's something along the lines of, because you're looking to get the clicks, you want the graphics big, and it's just like first round, Toronto Raptors trade first round draft pick for San Antonio Spurs power forward Thaddeus Young. You see that, and you're like, fucking A. Gave up a first round pick. Well, who else was attached in that? There were also other attachments in that trade, but the thing is, the Detroit 31st or the Detroit second round pick. Detroit had the second worst record, if I'm not mistaken, which is why it was pick 31 or 30. It was not 31. I'm bad at counting. 33. Basically, the point is they had Detroit's unprotected second round pick in that trade. So Toronto was looking like they were going to make the playoffs, right? So you're looking like you're going to make the playoffs. You're going to be somewhere between 18 to 30, right? They ended up at 33. So you're just trading for a valuable player who's going to help your team improve and get further in the playoffs and help your team out long term. And you're only moving back 10 spots. All you did was move back 10 spots. That's it. and you still got a good basketball player in Christian Koloko. I'm very big on this guy. He's also very big. You got your 7-footer here, 7'1", 230. I think he will be a good basketball player for him. I don't know how much we're going to see of him this upcoming season, but from what we saw in the summer league, I think we'll see him. So we don't have too many stats on him. I don't think this website does. Oh, they do college stats. Nice. 12.5 points in his final season. 12.5 points, 25 minutes a night, getting you some rebounds, 7.5 rebounds, getting you a bunch of blocks, 2.76 blocks a night. So point is this. Whenever Christian Koloko, and keep in mind, they're going to get him to become at least an adequate, serviceable three-point shooter, you have to keep in mind, like, Koloko is going to be nice, and at worst, he's going to be a serviceable role player for your future championship team or your current championship team. So I think Toronto did a phenomenal job. I think in the last 2 seasons, I don't have it all right in front of me, but I think there's a very real argument to be made that in the last 2 seasons, the Toronto Raptors have done, there have been some bad mistakes, like Svi didn't pan out properly, but those are few and far between. You could argue Toronto's had the best 2 seasons as far as like management moves, operations moves, whatever you want to call it, roster moves with what they had. I think that they've just done a good job. So that's it for today, man. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button for daily NBA videos. And, I post Raptors videos all the time if you're new here. And we're at, like I said at the beginning, we're at 5 of 30. I think this is number 5. So we got a little to get going here. So stay tuned for that. And I'll see you guys later. Peace. But guys, drop some comments down below. Give me your record for Toronto. Where does Toronto finish? What seed are they going to be in the playoffs next season?